Dear students, hope you are all doing well following the online classes, and I expect some feedback, and if you want you can post your comment whether I am too fast or too slow, any doubts. We are coming to the fag end of the chronic suppurative arthritis media. Hope you are all following this topic. This is very important from examination point of view and practice point of view. Now we will come to this very important aspect of chronic suppurative arthritis media, that is tuberculous arthritis media. When you say tuberculous arthritis media, the Westerners, they take very little interest because they don't have this problem at their place. India being a developing country and thickly populated and very poor socio-economic standards, illiteracy, poverty. It is a very important center in the whole world for tuberculosis infection. Naturally, we have to take interest on this particular topic. We should keep this in mind. Now, tuberculous arthritis media, what is the etiology? You know very well the causative organism is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It is an acid-fast bacillus and it produces generally infection in the lungs, that is pulmonary tuberculosis. We all know this. Now, whatever tuberculosis occurs anywhere else in the body, we call it as extrapulmonary tuberculosis. Now, tuberculous arthritis media is an example for extrapulmonary tuberculosis. There is no part of the body which is not involved by tuberculosis. Maybe brain, the bone, the liver, the lymph nodes, anywhere you name it, it has it. Tuberculosis invades and infects almost all organs in the body. So like that, the middle ear is no exception. Middle ear also can get involved with tuberculosis, but almost always secondary to pulmonary tuberculosis. When you diagnose tuberculosis or when you suspect tuberculosis in the middle ear cavity, you should be able to demonstrate a pulmonary lesion, a lesion in the lungs. And it is more seen in young children and adolescents, young adults. And mostly, as it is from pulmonary tuberculosis, the infected material or exudate or expectoration, it enters the middle ear cavity through the eustachian tubal orifice. That means the secretions that are brought out from the lungs into the throat, they enter the eustachian tube through the nasopharynx. Occasionally, it may be blood-borne also. It will be blood-borne. How does the infection reach the blood? Once again through the lungs, or sometimes through the tonsils, sometimes from the cervical lymph nodes or mesenteric lymph nodes. Now, what is the pathological process? How does it occur in the middle ear cavity? Once the mycobacterium enters the middle ear cavity, it produces tubercles, that is projections in the submucous layer. Tuberculosis, you may recall, it is a chronic granulomatous condition. You are all fresh from pathology. What is a granulomatous condition? A granulomatous condition is one which produces granuloma or granulomata. What is that? A granuloma is a chronic infection characterized by globular lesions. So that means small hemispherical globular lesions characterized by proliferation of histiocytes. And the characteristic feature of tuberculosis is caseation and giant cell formation. So if you look for the tubercle under microscope, you will find caseation, necrosis, and there will be foreign body giant cells. They are characteristic feature of histopathological picture of tuberculosis. Coming to the ear, there will be painless arteria. There will be discharge, exudate, which is generally painless, in contrast to our conventional otitis media secondary to non-specific organisms. As a result, what happens? Slowly, the tympanic membrane may get necrosed, and there will be formation of granulations. These granulations, in contrast to our granulations in non-specific otitis media, they are paler. So if you see granulations which are paler, you must suspect tuberculosis. So if the disease is allowed to progress, what happens? There will be necrosis of the bone and necrosis of the ossicles. As a result, there will be what is known as sequestrum formation. There may be loose bone fragments. You do not come across this generally in case of conventional otitis media. Now, if it is not treated in time, it produces complications. The complications include mastitis. There will be mastitis, that is infection in the mastoid bone, mastoid part of the temporal bone. How do we diagnose mastitis? There will be discharge and pain. There will be tenderness of the mastoid. The classical 3-point tenderness, that is Schwartz sign. This is middle finger in the Symbaconcha corresponding to the mastodantrum. The index finger just behind the mastoid process or the posterior aspect of the mastoid process. The thumb in the tip of the mastoid. This is the 3-point tenderness. So mastoiditis can occur. And once again, as it destroys bone, the fallopian canal may get destroyed, in which the 7th nerve is lodged. As a result, 7th nerve paralysis occurs. I remember still about 30-35 years ago, I operated one young girl for otitis media. I was The surgery went on well, even though there are plenty of granulations which I cleared and repaired the tympanic membrane. Even though it took time, I did reasonably a satisfactory job. I was expecting good result. That good girl, she was very good looking and she was supposed to join duty as a teacher. Now, you know what happened? On 6th or 7th post-operative day, she developed facial paralysis. I was terribly upset. What happened? This young, beautiful girl, she developed facial paralysis. The surgery went on well. I did not injure the facial nerve. Then I had a doubt. She must be having, of course, as a suspicion, I sent the granulations for histopathology. It was negative for tuberculosis. And then, now that the patient developed facial paralysis, once again I have suspected, and then I sent the patient to the chest physician to rule out tuberculosis. He made all tests pertaining to tuberculosis, chest X-ray, ECSR, MANTO, so on and so forth, and said no tuberculosis. Then I reassured the patient and her parents, and then I put her on steroids and facial exercises, physiotherapy, etc. And she came after, say, 1 or 2 weeks after surgery. She did not make any progress. She did not make any progress. I was really worried. Then I I wanted to examine her again, spending enough time. So when I palpated carefully the neck, I picked up a small lymph node, which I biopsied. The biopsy showed tuberculosis. Then I sent back to the chest physician, and he has given anti-tuberculosis treatment. In no time, almost in a week's time of ATT treatment, she recovered fully. The facial paralysis has disappeared. Her facial had totally recovered. I felt very happy. But at what cost? By the time the diagnosis is made, by the time the ATT started working, she lost hearing. She developed labyrinthitis and profound sensorineural hearing loss. Why I am telling this anecdote is the importance of early diagnosis, early suspicion, early diagnosis. There were not enough armamentarium to diagnose tuberculosis at that period. Now I think the situation is different. Not only facial paralysis, we may also see some patients with post-auricular fistula. Once again, very competent colleague of mine has operated on one patient. And patient, he's a very competent surgeon. Patient did well, and after 1 week, the suture removal was done, and there is gaping of the wound. Then he has done secondary suture. After 1 week, he has removed the sutures. Again, there is gaping of the wound. Then somehow the patient came to me. At the appearance of the patient, I had a strong suspicion. Go and get a chest X-ray done. When the chest X-ray was done, there is a huge cavity on both sides, both apices, which is suspicion of, which is characteristic of tuberculosis. Because of tuberculosis, the operated wound refused to heal. When patient was put on ATT and the secondary suturing is done, patient's post-auricular wound has healed well. osteomyelitis can occur, and bony sequestra formation is also seen. And just now I mentioned, patient can develop profound hearing loss. Hearing loss is because of the lesion entering the inner ear. Occasionally, these patients, they may develop vertigo as a predominant symptom or as a primary symptom. And when you take an MRI of the membranous labyrinth, you may find a small tuberculoma, which is diagnostic of tuberculous otitis media. And I have seen personally a case of Gredinego syndrome. I have not published yet. The patient came to me with Gredinego syndrome. You know very well what Gredinego syndrome is. Discharge, deafness. Discharge is very profuse discharge, and there will be deafness and deep boring pain and diplopia. Diplopia is because of the involvement of the sixth nerve at Doral's canal, which is at the apex of the petrous part of the temporal bone. So I did a mastectomy and then the specimen excised granulations for histopathology. It has come as tuberculosis. That Gredinego syndrome also can occur as a complication of tuberculous otitis media. Now, what do we find in the clinical features? There will be discharge, which is painless, and perforation, which is very characteristic. The perforation in tuberculous otitis media, it is not perforation, but perforations. There will be multiple perforations. That means more than one perforation in the tympanic membrane. If you find more than one perforation of the tympanic membrane, it cannot be anything else except tuberculosis. And there will be hearing loss and seventh nerve palsies. You can see this picture, there is discharge, and you can see small perforations on both sides. You can see in this picture there are two perforations. In this picture also you can see there are two perforations. See, there is granulation. It is comparatively, what is granulation tissue? Granulation tissue in the ear is nothing but young vascular connective tissue with inflammatory cells. That means vascular tissue, young vascular tissue which lack the tunica intima, they readily bleed and touch. The tunica media, they readily bleed and touch. And fibroblasts will be there and inflammatory cells will be there. But this is a very pale, generally it should look bright red in case of non-specific inflammation. And just now I told you there will be necrosis of the tympanic membrane. The entire tympanic membrane is gone. And you can see these edematous mucosa with granulomatous appearance. And see this X-ray on this side, on the left side, it is normal cellular mastoid. See the honeycomb appearance, CT scan. CT scan, axial view. Whereas on this side, there will be loss of honeycomb appearance. That means there is mastoiditis. Coming to the diagnosis. Diagnosis, there will be high ESR. If you do a Monto test, it is strongly positive. Simple positive, it is of no significance. It should be strongly positive. And if you take in a chest X-ray, there will be evidence of tuberculosis. There may be cavitation, there may be consolidation, there may be thickened pleura, and there may be collapse of one of the lobes, and there may be deviation of the trachea, and so on and so forth. These are all the characteristic features of the pulmonary tuberculosis as far as the chest X-ray is concerned. Now, you take the discharge, you always do discharge for culture and sensitivity in our chronic suppurative aortic media cases. Here, you should mention clearly for culture of the microbacteria, tuberculosis culture. It takes a few weeks time for the establishment of diagnosis. And we should also send the granulation for histopathological evidence, and also the bone pieces which we see inside the mastoid while we operate, they also should be sent for histopathological evidence. But in the presence of secondary infection, very, very difficult to establish the diagnosis of tuberculosis. And we can do what is known as a DNA probe test and also a PCR test. These are latest tests which are very beneficial for the diagnosis of the tuberculosis. In 1 or 2 days time, they'll report it. Now, how do we treat? Treatment is treatment of the primary condition, that is tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is treated by means of anti-tuberculous treatment. All the anti-tuberculous drugs under the supervision of a tuberculosis specialist should be treated. Apart from that, we should also do the local toilet. That is, periodically you have to examine the patient and do gentle clearance of the discharge, either by dry mopping or by gentle suction clearance in the outpatient. And if there are any granulations, they also should be addressed. You can touch some 25% silver nitrate, which acts against granulations. And if the patient develops complications, as I mentioned earlier, like facial paralysis, mastoiditis, or any severe symptoms, sometimes these patients may have threatened intracranial complications. You have to do a mastectomy. Mastectomy, you may do a simple mastectomy, a complete mastectomy, which is also known as canal wall up technique, because we don't remove the posterior meatal wall. We also do a canal wall down technique, that is modified radical mastectomy. So for a complete mastectomy, we call it as canal wall up technique, whereas in case of modified radical mastectomy, we call it as canal wall down technique, otherwise known as open cavity technique. If you address only mastoid, we call it as mastectomy. If we address middle ear cavity and mastoid, then we call it as mastectomy plus tympanoplasty. That is called canal wall up technique, because we are not removing the bridge. If you remove the bridge, it will become modified radical mastectomy. As we are addressing the tympanic cavity also in the same sitting, we call it as mastectomy and tympanoplasty, canal wall down technique. This finishes tuberculosis. Another granulomatous condition that should be known is syphilitic otitis media. I myself have not seen so far a case of syphilitic otitis media in my entire career, but still we should have some idea what does this syphilitic otitis media uh, appear like. We all know syphilis is caused by the spirochetal organism called Treponema pallidum. It reaches the nuclear cavity through the eustachian tube like tuberculosis, and sometimes it may be blood-borne also. Syphilis is one disease which can involve any part in the body. Previously, they used to say if you know everything about syphilis, it is implied that you will know everything about medicine. It was such a rampant problem. Thank God for the modern antibiotics, especially the penicillin group of organisms. Now this has almost disappeared, but still it can occur. We should keep that in mind. And it may produce profound sensorineural hearing loss. In my early days of my career as an otolaryngologist, whenever a patient comes with bilateral profound sensorineural hearing loss, we used to do a VDR test also to rule out syphilis. Now, also we can have an idea about this condition. And vertigo, some people may come with complaint of vertigo. And during vertigo, you may also demonstrate this Henneberg sign. What is Henneberg sign? Can anybody tell me? Can anybody chart me? Participants? All right. Henneberg sign is fistula sign, positive fistula sign without actual fistula being present. What is fistula sign? If you apply digital pressure over the tegmen or the tragus of the ear, you will find vertigo. You will see vertigo and nystagmus. That means there is a fistulous communication from the external ear into the inner ear. That is fistula sign. Where is it positive? Generally, it is positive in chronic suppurative otitis media due to cholesteatoma. Generally, cholesteatoma produces destruction of bone, especially bone over the either promontory or over the dome of the lateral semicircular canal. As a result, if you apply pressure, the pressure is carried out into the inner ear and the inner gets stimulated. You will get nystagmus and vertigo. Now, Henneberg sign is fistula sign without actual fistula being present. You won't find any fistula here. It is because of the laxity of the stapediovestibular joint, stapediovestibular ligament as a result of syphilis. It will be very lax. This just gentle pressure is enough to push the footplate of stapes into the vestibule and producing vertigo. This is diagnostic of syphilitic labyrinthitis. Now, how do we confirm this condition? By means of VDR test. What is VDR? Venereal disease research laboratory test, and FTA test, that is fluorescent treponemal antibody test, or TPI test. What is TPI? Treponema pallidum immobilization test. These tests are diagnostic of syphilis. Treatment is once again anti-syphilitic treatment, the penicillin group of treatment under the supervision of a venereology specialist, and surgery if there is. This particular condition is characterized by fetid otitis media. You have to do periodical cleansing by oral mopping and suction, and surgery, that is if necessary you have to do a mastectomy and tympanoplasty, either canal wall up technique, canal wall down technique. You know the difference between canal wall up technique and down technique? As we are keeping the bridge intact in canal wall up technique, you will have better hearing prospects. We are not destroying the inside mechanism, and we are trying to do a osteoplasty and keeping the bridge intact. So hearing results will be better as far as the canal wall up technique is concerned. In case of canal wall down technique, that is modified radical mastectomy, as we are downing the bridge, hearing results will be comparatively less. Now we are keeping a cavity inside so that we can periodically inspect. So the philosophy of cholesteatoma surgery is expose, excise, exteriorize. That is, we have to remove every bit of cholesteatoma and excise it and expose it to the exterior so that there is no negative pressure in the middle ear cavity and the middle ear cleft as such. That's the principle. So we leave behind a big cavity as a result of the modified radical mastectomy. It's a good thing. Patient will not have generally recurrence of the disease, but as a result of a big cavity being present, it accumulates wax, sometimes fungus, sometimes little granulations. They may get infected. Occasionally they may be discharged. So it is a doctor dependent cavity. Once in a while he has to go to the doctor and he has to get the debris cleared very carefully. So it is a doctor dependent cavity throughout the patient's life, unless the cavity gets well epithelialized and it is very free from the problem. And not only that, whenever you give an open cavity like this, patient cannot swim. If patient swims, then as the cavity is open and the semicircular canal, duodenal semicircular canal is also open, patient may develop vertiginous attack. In the same way, when patient travels by a two-wheeler, the cold air touches the mastoid cavity and the inner ear gets stimulated and patient may develop vertigo. These are the complications of open cavity mastectomy. And if you want a hearing aid, once again, it's very difficult to use a hearing aid when there is a cavity. Patient, they have to prepare a separate prosthesis and then they have to use it. And if you are a doctor, if you have an open cavity, once again, you cannot keep your stethoscope very effectively in that particular site. But in our patients, in our country, a modified radical mastectomy is very preferred because our patients, they do not come frequently for follow-up. An intact canal wall technique or a canal wall up technique, it is having a very great problem, that is recurrence of cholesteatoma. So patient need a second look, second operation if there is recurrence. In the Western patients, the insurance companies pay. So patient doesn't mind getting operated any number of times. But here the situation is different. So a modified radical mastectomy with an open cavity is a very preferred technique as far as our country is concerned. Thank you.